All right, what's up, my brothers from another mother? I'm on with Rollo Tomassi of the Rational Male series. We're going to be going through a bunch of questions today on Q&A that I solicited through some social media platforms. Those of you that are familiar with Rollo need no introduction. Those that aren't, I'm going to leave some links in the description below for his work, to his books and to his blog. Rollo's a red pill pioneer and a guy that I can say for myself personally has opened my eyes to the way the world works. And I know he's woken up a lot of guys that have been sleepwalking through their life as well. So we're going to get a bunch of questions today. Leave a comment below and smash the like button and show this to somebody that might need to see it. All right, Rollo. So I just finished reading your second book, Preventative Medicine. Sorry, I want to say maintenance, but it's medicine.
Preventive medicine.
Preventive medicine. And there was two elements of that book that really stood out to me. And one of them was, I think you spent an almost entire chapter on the dualistic nature of women's mating strategy with the Sheryl Sandberg quote. And I'm just going to read it out because some of you guys may not have heard it, but she said, "When looking for a life partner, my advice to women is to date all of them. The bad boys, the cool boys, the commitment-phobic boys, the crazy boys, but do not marry them. The things that make the bad boys sexy do not make them good husbands. When it comes time to settle down and find somebody who wants when it comes time to settle down, find somebody who wants an equal partner. Someone who thinks women should be smart, opinionated, and ambitious. Someone who values fairness and expects or even better, wants to do his share in the home." These men exist, and trust me, over time, nothing is sexier. So she's one of the most prolific, I guess, women in North America. I mean, who would have more screen space than her? Maybe Hillary Clinton, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. And she's come out and admitted publicly the pluralistic nature of women's dating strategy. Can you talk about that for a little bit and shed some light on it for guys? Because I know that hypergamy comes up a lot in the videos that I talk about. You write about it all throughout all of your writing. Break that down.
One of the reasons that I use that as a primary quote, and I've used it on several different posts, but I really sort of wrapped it around preventive medicine, is because I think that this is something that men need to expect from women more than anything else. Hypergamy really boils down to alpha fucks and beta bucks. It's the alpha side of things where you're balancing a need between genetic benefits and weighing them against security and provisioning benefits. We can get really deep into the evolutionary psychology of this, but really what it boils down to is dads versus cads. And right there, what you just read from Sheryl Sandberg is what I call open hypergamy. And I think more and more we're seeing our social order really shaped by how well men can serve what's really known as gynocentrism, or the gynocracy, what I like to call the feminine imperative. And when people ask me what's the definition of the feminine imperative, I always say it's whatever benefits women's hypergamy the most, whatever can socially or personally or psychologically that can be fashioned into something that can serve hypergamy for women is what the feminine imperative really is. That is their imperative. It's a sexual imperative, of course, but it's also a survival imperative too. A lot of hypergamy comes back to just the basic fundamental nature of women. And in my 21 talk, I spoke about how hypergamy is intimately related to what's known as ovulatory shift. So if we dig really, really deep and we dig into women's biology and neurological, behavioral links, what we're looking at a situation where women during parts of their menstrual cycle prefer a bad boy. They prefer the more masculinized guy, the guy with the stronger, jawline, the guy with the pecs, the guy with the abs, the guy with, the V taper, the lower voice. Anything that really indicates a higher testosterone capacity in that. Now, I don't know if you ever read The Red Queen or The Selfish Gene, but those are pretty good books to really wrap your head around what testosterone really means, not just to men, but to the world in general, and to women who are looking for high testosterone, physical specimens with which to breed. I'm not sure if you've ever heard of the sexy sons theory, but you'll figure out what I mean by that is that in the Red Queen, I think it's either Red Queen or it's Selfish Gene, but the sexy sons theory is that women want to get with guys who they believe will, produce a child that is that much more adaptable to survive in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So, and functionally, evolution, creation, whatever you want to call it, has created women and selected for women who are going to get hot at certain parts of their ovulatory cycle in order to facilitate that. So when women get closer to their ovulatory or their ovulation, which was what's called the proliferative phase of the menstrual cycle, is the phase in which women prefer more masculinized men. They prefer more masculinized sense. It's a total sensory kind of shift in ovulatory shift in women's nature during that particular time, because they're trying to have it's whatever nature can do to get a woman to be fertilized at that particular time, and by the best available physical specimen of the male at that particular time. So they, like I said, they prefer those masculinized features in men. Conversely, once ovulation has taken effect and she's flushing her system and she's in the downside of her cycle, where she's on the rag, or she's it's an inmenesis, I believe is the proper scientific term for it. But that is when women start to look for comfort, and they start to look for rapport, and they start to look for more feminized features in men, and they start to look for men who have a better provisioning capacity. They look for men who they're more comfortable with. And it is at this point in the phase that human females actually engage in what's known as transactional sex, as opposed to validational sex. Validational sex would be in the alpha side of things. Transactional sex would be in the beta, or the
beta bucks.
Beta phase. Yeah. So what this really that's the nuts and bolts of it, really, just as quickly as I can say. If anybody wants to read about what I'm just got into, I have a really great post called "Your Friend Menstruation," and I would suggest reading that for a little bit more in-depth description of what ovulatory shift is. Now, I believe it's that people give me a whole lot of shit for like really overemphasizing hypergamy, but I don't think I emphasize it enough, quite honestly, because I really believe that phase and that particular biological nature of women is what prompts a larger mating strategy. And that mating strategy is just what we're talking about. It's a dualistic strategy. And that is exactly what Sheryl Sandberg has described here for us. She's saying, in your party years, which I call between like 18 and say 26 or 27, that is the phase during which you should look for the bad boy. You should fuck the commitment phobic boy. You should, of course she says date, but really she means fuck these guys.
Yeah, we know.
And have basically concentrate your efforts on the alpha side of things. Then once you get to, she's just basically describing everything anybody in the manosphere, myself included, has said about women's phases of life. And that's actually one of the reasons I wrote Preventive Medicine. But once you get to a point, and usually that point is what I call the epiphany phase. And that epiphany phase usually happens between 29 and 32, or 31, 29 and 31.
The wall.
And that is where women are deciding that it's time to check out of the sexual marketplace, and that they realize that they're not going to be able to compete for those same bad boys and all those guys that Sheryl Sandberg just said were so great during your fun years. That they can no longer compete for the attentions of those guys, because there's a new younger crop of women that have just come up who are 20, 22 years old, and those guys are interested in them. So at this stage, the epiphany phase, at least as far as my writing is concerned, is when a woman says, okay, I need to get right with myself. I need to start doing things the right way. I need to get right with God. I need to be more responsible. I'm done with the bad boys, and now I want to get a nice, good, stable beta provider who's going to be good for me and my kids. Now, whether she's had those kids already with the alpha, or she's going to have those kids with the guy that she's talking about at this point, is really kind of irrelevant. But what I mean is that if you look at this from a larger scale, if you look at the party years as the alpha phase for women who are primarily, focusing on that, you can say that anything past the epiphany phase is really kind of the beta side of things for a woman's, life plan. So she's looking for that beta dude. She's looking for the guy who's a good provider, who's got a good job, who, like she was just saying, wants to be an equal partner.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the part where she says, and nothing over time, nothing's sexier. Well, yeah, because over time, the amount of time it takes to just self-convince that all the guys that you were with in your party years were really not all that great.
Yeah.
And hopefully you can do that, but that's really sort of a self-convincing mechanism right there.
Yeah.
So now we've gone from ovulatory shift from a basic individual person, woman, to her own sexual strategy, to a life plan that goes from, in her most fertile years, her high fertility window years, to when it's time for her to settle down and when it's time for her to be more responsible and be a mother, right? Well, the problem is that we're still expecting men to shoulder the consequences and all of the the fallout or anything that followed those party years is now placed on the guy who she decides there's nothing sexier about, or she thinks is an equal partner now. So we've gone from, like I said, from the biological side of things to the individual side of things to the lifespan side of things. Now from there we can pick this up and say, well, if we're building a society based on what is best for women, how can we legislate hypergamy into our laws? How can we build that into consent? How can we make that work with childbearing? How can we de-emphasize paternity in men, because we don't want those poor saps when they're in their 29 to 30, their epiphany phase, when they're trying to get married. We can't have them believing that they're not special because they'll never marry us and take over the responsibilities of the alphas that we love so much.
Mm.
How can we convince them of that? Well, we can convince them that paternity is not all that important. So beyond that, we look at the legislation all the way up to what I said in the first female president, where there was a hope that there was going to be a first female president. Now, I'm glad that there wasn't a first female president. But think of the social change in the context of hypergamy that a Hillary Clinton presidency would have enacted in our larger social narrative.
Well, I live in Canada, so I see it every day under Justin Trudeau.
For all the people saying that, oh, you just talk about hypergamy all the time, and that's you over focus on that. Well, this is a big fuck you, okay? Because it goes from the micro to the macro, and I'm trying to give you the really nutshell, speech that I gave at the 21 convention, but it is that important. That little biological ovulatory shift gets extrapolated into a personal sexual strategy for a woman. That gets extrapolated into a lifestyle, into a life, decisions, choices, context. From there, we go and we say, well, if we're going to, focus primarily on women and women's rights and feminism and everything else, how can we make hypergamy something that is, that all women can participate in, even the fat ones, even the women who shouldn't really be involved or should be suboptimal choices? How can we make them at least have some share of the alpha pie, right? And how can we lift that up, and how can we bring that to a larger scale? Now I'm just going to throw one more thing out here. I'm going to say, if you look at countries like feminist primary countries like, say, Denmark or Sweden, what's happening to those countries right now? Well, they're run by supposedly egalitarian governments, but really they are feminine primary governments. And what are they trying to do the most? They're trying to, make an equal society. But the thing is they're really trying to promote a feminine primary society. So I'll just leave it there. But if you look at the countries where we have, and even Great Britain right now, you look at those countries where you have a female, prime minister or president, or you have a very effeminate, very feminine primary, like prime minister, say, like Trudeau in Canada right now.
Yep.
What's going on in those countries is they are focusing the lion's share of their concern on women's issues.
Yeah.
On women, and focusing as much as they can on that person. And why? Hypergamy.
Hypergamy. Okay, so two more things before we wrap up. I want to do this another minute or two. One is more of an observation. I've noticed that the beta bucks, alpha fucks thing can sort of pivot. So, you mentioned, there's the party years and there's the provisioning years after that, after they hit the wall sort of thing. But I was 39 when I got divorced. So I noticed in the dating world, you can see the alpha desires and you can see the beta desires. Is that something that pivots with women depending on whether or not they're married, they're divorced? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, what I would say is that, because there's probably people right now who are watching this and are saying, well, I didn't do that. I got married at 22 and I didn't go through those phases.
They missed the party years, so they do it at 40.
They missed the party years, exactly.
Yeah.
So what do they do? I've got a post called Making Up for Missing Out. And that's when, why do cougars go for younger guys? Because they feel like they missed out on those years when all their friends were having fun. Mm-hmm. Just like Sheryl Sandberg said, you better have your fun. They feel like they're missing out on that. So they go into what I call an alpha reinterest phase. So at some point, women do follow that pattern. Now, does it happen before or after their 20s? Mm-hmm. It really depends on the woman and the choices she makes. It also depends on, the culture and, her social interactions or social
even where they are that night when they're on their menstrual cycle, when they go out too, right? Like all those things matter.
And the other thing I was going to say is that a lot of guys like to say, well, that men can control hypergamy. And I'll tell you right now that hypergamy is not a straitjacket. And a lot of guys seem to think that, I guess particularly in the MGTOW community, they seem to think that they can't control it or they can't work with it. And I will tell you right now that if you're a red pill aware and you have a strong grasp of what I'm saying here and my books or whatever you want, even you don't even read my book, read somebody else's book, but if you have a good, strong red pill grasp of things, hypergamy should not be seen as a straitjacket. It should not be seen as some sort of disability. I can tell you right now, and I like telling this story. Like I can remember one time when I was in my rock star 20s, and I had met this girl, and it was like a same night lay that I had got that night, and the girl was really reluctant to have sex with me at the time, but she saw me as being a high value alpha male, right? Because remember, I got long hair down to my ass. I'm playing in bands, and I've got social proof, and I've got pre-selection up the yin yang. So she wants to have sex with me, but she's on the rag. I didn't find that out till later, but she's on the rag. So what does she do? She calls me up later. Once she gets home, she says, "Hey, come on over," and basically an invitation to come have sex with her. Mm-hmm. So I did, like any 22-year-old guy would. And I go out there, and she is, I can tell that she's on the rag. I won't tell you how I know she's on the rag, but I knew she was on the rag at the time. Mm-hmm. And yet she is fucking me like there's no tomorrow. And she's just, she's real enthusiastic consent. That was it. And so we're having this great sex. It's the same night lay. And when I was writing the parts about hypergamy, I'm like, I remembered this time and I go, well, so is hypergamy really all that constraining? And I would say no, because there is a part, I believe, a part in women's evolved hindbrains that if they see a good enough opportunity, if they see a high status, alpha enough guy, they are going to moderate their own hypergamy. So what I'm saying is that if the meal looks good enough, they're going to eat it right then and there, no matter what contingencies or no matter what the circumstances are before that. So
totally agree.
A woman can be in her down cycle and still want to have sex with that alpha guy. But remember, she's doing that not necessarily because she's hot to trot and ready to go, because if she's in the right ovulatory position. It's because she sees a prime opportunity to lock down that guy for a future relationship or a future sexual encounters where she might get pregnant from that guy.
There you go.
She's got to sell herself on that. So is it a straitjacket? No, it's not a straitjacket. And are there ways around hypergamy? Yes, there are plenty of them.
Yeah, and I have people that ask me all the time, how do you beat hypergamy? There you go. There's your answer, guys.
work with it. It's not, like I said, it's not a straitjacket.
All right, Rollo, I just want to thank you for your time today. Really appreciate that. Again, links are in the description below. If you guys have a comment, please do so. Leave something down there, smash the like button, and share this with somebody that might need to see it. Thanks, Rollo.